There are stories etched into the soul of humanity, tales of heroes and monsters. We think we know them. The hero with his shining sword, the monster born of darkness. But what if that line is a crack in a mirror reflecting a terrible injustice? You know the monster, the woman with snakes for hair whose gaze turns men to stone. But what if this monster wasn't born, but made? What if the gods themselves crafted her hideous form, then sent a hero to kill her for what they had done? This is the story of Medusa. Prepare yourself. The tale you're about to hear isn't one of glory, but of profound tragedy, of beauty corrupted, innocence betrayed, and vengeance so cold it could turn flesh to stone. Before the hissing serpents and the petrifying gaze, Medusa was a woman, and she was beautiful. The most tragic version of her story begins not in a dark lair, but in the hallowed halls of a goddess. Medusa was a priestess, sworn to serve Athena, the virgin goddess of wisdom and warfare. Her life was one of quiet devotion, her days measured by prayer and ritual. Her hair was said to be her greatest beauty, a cascade of silken strands. Men would travel for miles, not just to worship, but to catch a glimpse of the priestess, whose beauty was said to rival the divine. But in the world of gods and mortals, beauty is a dangerous thing. It draws attention, and the gaze of a god is a gaze of possession. She had given her life to Athena, believing that in devotion she would find safety, a belief soon to be shattered. For in the heavens, an eye had turned towards her, the eye of Poseidon, lord of the seas, a god who took what he wanted. Poseidon desired Medusa. He saw her, and he took her. The ultimate violation happened not in some secluded grove, but in the one place Medusa should have been safest, inside Athena's own sacred temple on the cold marble floor before the very statue of the goddess she served. It was an act of unthinkable blasphemy. Medusa must have prayed, praying to her goddess for justice. She received neither. When Athena appeared, her eyes were not filled with sympathy. They were filled with a cold, righteous fury. The goddess of wisdom saw only one thing: her temple had been polluted. And in her rage, she failed, or chose not, to make a distinction between perpetrator and victim. To punish Poseidon, a fellow Olympian god, would have been to start a war. It was far easier to punish the mortal. And so, Athena, in an act of staggering cruelty, turned her wrath upon the weeping woman at her feet. This wasn't justice. It was a divine sentence. The innocent priestess was about to become a monster, not by choice, but by the decree of a cruel goddess. The curse began with her most celebrated feature, her hair. Her golden locks were the first to be corrupted. Life drained from each strand as they thickened, coarsened, and began to writhe with a life of its own. The silken threads darkened, twisting and coiling into a nest of hissing, venomous snakes. Her skin, once soft, grew cold and pallid. Her face, once enchanting, twisted into a mask of perpetual rage and despair. And then came the final, most terrible part of the curse. Athena, ensuring no man would ever desire Medusa again, made her very gaze a weapon. Anyone who looked directly into Medusa's eyes would be instantly petrified, their bodies turned to cold, lifeless stone. She was Medusa the Gorgon. And perhaps cruelest of all, Athena left her mortal. She was made into a monster, but left killable. Exiled and reviled, Medusa fled to a desolate island at the edge of the world. For years, Medusa lived in bleak solitude. Her home was a cave, its entrance a grotesque garden of frozen screams, the stony remains of those who had dared to venture too close. They were monuments to her curse, a power she never asked for. Her existence was a paradox, powerful yet powerless to know peace. Over time, sailors spread tales of the lone mortal Gorgon, whose gaze meant certain death. The stories painted her as a creature of pure evil. And so, heroes came. They came seeking glory, their heads filled with tales of a trophy to be won. They arrived on her shores with swords and shields, shouting challenges. And one by one, they became part of her stone garden. With each new statue, her despair must have deepened. She was not a predator, but a victim, her curse a tragic defense. She was trapped, a prisoner of a goddess's petty rage. But the gods weren't finished with her. They had made her a monster. Now, they would send a hero to end her. Far away, A young demigod named Perseus, son of Zeus, was tricked by a cruel king, Polydectes, into a suicide mission. The king demanded an impossible gift, the head of Medusa. Perseus accepted. As a son of Zeus, he would not go empty-handed. They had created this monster, and now they would arm the man sent to kill her. The deck was stacked against Medusa from the start. A group of gods rallied to aid Perseus, giving him divine artifacts. From some helpful nymphs, Perseus received winged sandals to fly, a special bag to safely contain the head, and a cap of invisibility. Hermes, the messenger god, gave him an adamantine sword. And from Athena, the very architect of Medusa's suffering, Perseus received the most crucial tool of all, a polished bronze shield to use as a mirror to avoid her gaze. Perseus was no longer just a hero. He was a divine instrument, an assassin sent to clean up their mess. He soared towards her island. Medusa, unaware, slept in her dark cave. It would be her last. Perseus arrived at the desolate island, invisible thanks to the magic helm. He saw the stone figures, their faces locked in terror. Using Athena's polished shield as his guide, he moved cautiously toward the cave. He crept inside and saw her in the dim light, asleep on the cold floor. In the reflection, he saw not an epic monster, but a broken creature, vulnerable in her sleep. But Perseus had a mission. He raised the unbreakable sword. With his eyes fixed on the reflection, he brought the blade down in one swift, unerring arc. He severed her head from her body. She was pregnant, carrying the children of Poseidon. From her severed neck, two beings sprang forth, fully formed: Pegasus, the magnificent winged horse, and Chrysaor, a warrior wielding a golden sword. The commotion woke her immortal sisters. Her immortal sisters rose to avenge her, but they couldn't find the invisible killer. Perseus, still invisible, quickly placed Medusa's head in the bag and flew away. The hero had his prize. The monster was dead. The injustice was now complete. Perseus fled, but Medusa's power was not gone. Her severed head was now a weapon, and Perseus, the hero, used it repeatedly. He used it to save Princess Andromeda from a sea monster and to take revenge on King Polydectes, turning the cruel king and his court to stone. The final, most bitter irony came when Perseus's journey was done. He presented the head as a gift to the one goddess who had orchestrated the entire tragedy, Athena. And Athena, without a hint of remorse, took the head of the woman she had cursed and placed it upon her own shield, the Aegis. The face of Medusa became a symbol of Athena's power, an emblem used to ward off evil. The victim's likeness was now a protective talisman. So, was Medusa truly a monster? Or was she a victim of circumstances far beyond her control, a woman made monstrous by the unchecked power and cruelty of the gods? Her story is a chilling reminder that history is often written by the victors, and that behind every legend of a hero slaying a monster, there might be a far more tragic and uncomfortable truth. The hero got his glory, and the gods maintained their power. But Medusa, even in death, forces us to look, not at her face, but at the injustices of her story. And that is a gaze we should not turn away from. Subscribe for more stories that question what you thought you knew.